The last rays of sunset illuminated the letter in Olivia Vance's trembling hands, casting an amber glow across the devastating words that would forever change her life. "You have disgraced this family for the last time," her father had written in his precise penmanship. "Do not attempt to return home." The year was 1878, and at 22 years of age, Olivia found herself utterly alone in Camp Verde, Arizona Territory, a dusty frontier town that seemed as unforgiving as her family's judgment. The stagecoach that had delivered her father's letter had long since departed, leaving her standing outside the town's only hotel with nothing but a small trunk of belongings and the weight of her family's rejection pressing down upon her shoulders. Olivia had known the risk when she'd fallen in love with Thomas Blackburn, the son of her father's business rival. The Vances and Blackburns had been locked in a bitter feud over mining rights for decades. When Thomas had asked for her hand in marriage, her father had exploded in fury. She'd chosen love over family loyalty, only for Thomas to abandon her when her father threatened to ruin his family financially. Now she had neither. "Miss, are you planning to stand there all night?" A gruff voice startled her from her thoughts. Olivia turned to find an older man with a weathered face peering at her from the hotel doorway. The proprietor, she assumed. "My apologies, I was just—" She faltered, unsure how to explain her situation. "Well, come inside at least. Not safe for a lady to be out alone after dark." He gestured impatiently. Gathering her composure, Olivia lifted her trunk and followed him into the dimly lit lobby. The hotel was modest but clean, with a small front desk and a dusty parlor to one side. "I'll need a room for." She hesitated, realizing she had no idea how long she would stay. "For a week to start." The man eyed her suspiciously. "That'll be $3 in advance." Olivia reached into her reticule and withdrew the money, painfully aware that her funds were limited. Without her family's support, she would need to find employment quickly. Name's Walter Jenkins. "I own this establishment," the man said, sliding a key across the desk. "Room 3, top of the stairs." "Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. I'm Olivia Vance." His eyebrows raised slightly at her surname. "Vance, any relation to Maxwell Vance of Phoenix?" Olivia stiffened. "He's my father." "Interesting." Walter studied her more carefully. "Don't often see Vances in these parts, especially unaccompanied young ladies." "My circumstances have changed," she replied stiffly, unwilling to elaborate. Walter shrugged. "Well, Camp Verde's a small town, Miss Vance. Not much opportunity for someone of your background, but Sarah over at the schoolhouse is looking for help if you've got any education." "I do. Thank you for the information." Olivia gathered her trunk and started toward the stairs, feeling the weight of her uncertain future with each step. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and small window overlooking the main street. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing her tears to fall freely. Everything she had known was gone: her family, her home, her place in society. All because she had dared to love a man her father deemed unsuitable, and in the end, Thomas hadn't even fought for her. When faced with financial ruin, he had chosen his family's security over their love, proving her father right all along. The betrayal stung as sharply as her family's rejection. As darkness fell over Camp Verde, Olivia made a solemn promise to herself. She would never again allow her heart to rule her head. She would build a new life here, far from the shadow of her family's influence, and she would do it alone. The morning sun streamed through the thin curtains, rousing Olivia from a fitful sleep. She dressed carefully in her simplest day dress, determined to make a respectable impression. If she hoped to secure a position at the schoolhouse, she would need to appear capable and composed despite her inner turmoil. Camp Verde came alive in the morning light. The main street bustled with activity: merchants opening their shops, cowboys leading horses to the livery stable, women carrying baskets to the general store. It was a far cry from the refined society of Phoenix, but there was an honest vitality to the frontier town that Olivia found strangely appealing. The schoolhouse was a simple wooden structure at the edge of town. As Olivia approached, she could hear the sound of children reciting multiplication tables. She smoothed her skirts, took a deep breath, and knocked on the door. A harried-looking woman in her 40s opened it, her gray-streaked hair escaping from a tight bun. She regarded Olivia with surprise. "Yes, can I help you? Good morning, I'm Olivia Vance. Mr. Jenkins at the hotel mentioned you might be in need of assistance with the school." The woman's expression brightened. "Indeed I am. I'm Sarah Watkins. Please come in while the children work on their sums." Inside, about 20 children of various ages sat at wooden desks, heads bent over slates. They glanced up curiously as Olivia entered, and she offered them a small smile. "I've been praying for help," Sarah confided in a low voice. "The town has grown, and I simply cannot manage all these students alone. Do you have teaching experience?" "Not formally," Olivia admitted. "But I was educated at Miss Porter's school in Connecticut and have tutored younger children. I'm well versed in literature, mathematics, history, and French." Sarah's eyes widened. "Goodness, we rarely see such educated women in Camp Verde. What brings you to our little town, if you don't mind my asking?" Olivia had prepared for this question. "Family circumstances have changed. I'm seeking independence." Something in Sarah's expression suggested she understood there was more to the story, but she mercifully didn't press further. "Well, Miss Vance, I can offer you room and board at my home plus $2 a week. It's not much, but it's perfect," Olivia interrupted, relief washing over her. "When may I start?" "Right now, if you're willing. The younger children need help with their reading while I work with the older ones on geometry." And so Olivia's new life began. She spent the day helping 5 young children sound out words from their primers, finding unexpected joy in their eager faces and small triumphs. By afternoon, she had moved her few belongings into a small but comfortable room in Sarah's modest home near the schoolhouse. As the weeks passed, Olivia settled into a routine. She grew fond of her students and found satisfaction in her work, though she maintained a certain reserve with the townspeople. She attended church on Sundays but declined invitations to social gatherings. The pain of her family's rejection and Thomas's betrayal remained too fresh. It was on a scorching July afternoon that Olivia's carefully constructed new life was disrupted. School had been dismissed early due to the heat, and she was walking to the general store for supplies when a commotion near the livery stable caught her attention. A crowd had gathered around a man slumped against the water trough. Even from a distance, Olivia could see blood staining his shirt. "Someone fetch the doctor," a woman cried. "He's out at the Henderson place delivering their baby," came the reply. Curiosity and concern overcame Olivia's usual caution. She pushed her way through the onlookers to where the injured man sat. He was perhaps 30, with sun-browned skin and dark hair streaked with dust. His face was taut with pain, one hand pressed against his side where blood seeped between his fingers. "Let me through," Olivia said with an authority that surprised even herself. "I have some experience with tending wounds." It wasn't entirely true. She had only the basic first aid knowledge that all proper young ladies were taught, but no one challenged her as she knelt beside the wounded stranger. "What happened?" she asked, gently moving his hand to assess the damage. "Disagreement with a rattlesnake," he replied through gritted teeth, his blue eyes meeting hers with unexpected humor despite his condition. "Snake got the worst of it, though." Olivia couldn't help but smile at his spirit. "I'd say you're both worse for wear. This needs cleaning and bandaging properly. Can you walk to the doctor's office? We can use his supplies even if he's not there." The man nodded, and with the help of 2 bystanders, he was brought to his feet. Olivia supported him on one side as they made their slow way to the doctor's small office at the end of the street. Inside, Olivia directed him to sit on the examination table while she searched for supplies. She found clean bandages, carbolic acid for disinfection, and basic surgical tools. "This will hurt," she warned, preparing to clean the wound. "What's your name?" "Nathaniel Lawson," he replied, watching her with curious intensity. "Most folks call me Nate." "Well, Mr. Lawson, I suggest you hold on to something." She poured carbolic acid onto a clean cloth. To his credit, Nate only hissed when she pressed the disinfectant against the wound, though his knuckles turned white where he gripped the edge of the table. "You're not from around here," he observed once the worst of the cleaning was done. It wasn't a question. "No," she replied simply, threading a needle. "This needs stitching. You know how to do that, theoretically." Olivia smiled slightly. "I've sewn plenty of fine embroidery. Flesh can't be so different." To her surprise, he laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at his wound. "You're either the bravest or the most foolhardy woman I've ever met. I don't even know your name, and you're about to stitch me up." "Olivia Vance. I assist at the schoolhouse." She positioned the needle. "Now please try to hold still." Olivia worked carefully, placing neat stitches to close the 3-inch gash in his side. It wasn't as deep as she had feared, though it had bled profusely. "You're doing well," Nate said softly, watching her concentrate. "Where'd a schoolteacher learn to be so steady under pressure?" "My mother believed ladies should be prepared for all emergencies," Olivia replied, avoiding his gaze. "Though I admit this is the first time I've put her lessons to practical use. Well, I'm mighty grateful." His voice had a warmth that made her glance up, finding his eyes fixed on her face with undisguised admiration. Most people would have just waited for the doctor. Olivia finished the last stitch and cut the thread. "I'm not most people, Mr. Lawson. I can see that." His smile created crinkles around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. "And it's Nate, please." Olivia wrapped clean bandages around his torso, acutely aware of his taut muscles beneath her fingers. It had been a long time since she'd been this close to a man, and never one quite so rugged. "You'll need to keep this clean and have the doctor check it when he returns," she instructed, stepping back to create a proper distance between them. "And perhaps avoid rattlesnakes in the future." Nate eased himself off the table, testing his movement. "Solid advice, Miss Vance." He reached for his hat. "How much do I owe you for your doctoring?" "Nothing," she said quickly. "I was simply helping a person in need." He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Then I'm in your debt. Perhaps I can repay you with dinner sometime." Olivia felt her cheeks warm. "That's not necessary." "Didn't say it was necessary," he countered with a grin. "Said it would be my pleasure." "I don't socialize much," she said stiffly, gathering the bloody cloths to dispose of them. Something in his expression shifted, becoming more thoughtful. "Fair enough. But my offer stands if you change your mind." He settled his hat on his head with a slight wince. "I'm staying at the Circle L Ranch just outside town. My brother owns it." Olivia nodded politely, relieved when he finally departed. She hadn't expected the flutter of interest she'd felt at his invitation, a reaction she had no intention of indulging. She had learned her lesson about romantic entanglements, and a rugged cowboy with laughing eyes didn't fit into her new, carefully ordered life. Yet that evening, as she helped Sarah prepare dinner, Olivia found herself wondering about Nathaniel Lawson and the Circle L Ranch. She had heard of it, of course, one of the more prosperous cattle operations in the territory. Sarah would know more. "I treated a man with a snakebite today," she mentioned casually. "Nathaniel Lawson from the Circle L." Sarah looked up from the potatoes she was peeling. "Nate Lawson, I didn't know he was back in town. You know him?" "Everyone knows the Lawsons, good family." "Levi Lawson started that ranch from nothing 20 years ago, built it into something substantial before he passed last year. His sons run it now. Luke's the oldest, then Nate." Olivia absorbed this information. "Nate mentioned he was staying at the ranch. He doesn't live there permanently." Sarah shook her head. "Nate's a bit of a wanderer. Was a cavalry scout during the Apache troubles, then tried his hand at prospecting. Comes back to help his brother during roundup and branding." "Why do you ask?" "No reason," Olivia said quickly. "Just curious about the man I treated." Sarah gave her a knowing look, but mercifully changed the subject to the upcoming harvest festival. Olivia was grateful for the diversion, though her thoughts kept returning to Nate's invitation and the inexplicable disappointment she felt knowing he wouldn't be in camp very long. Several days passed without any sign of Nathaniel Lawson, and Olivia told herself it was for the best. She focused on her teaching and helped Sarah prepare for the autumn term. Yet she found herself glancing toward the door whenever someone entered the general store or scanning the street when she walked to and from the schoolhouse. It was nearly a week later when Olivia encountered him again. She was returning from delivering a lesson plan to one of their older students who was ill, taking the longer route that passed by the creek for some moments of solitude, when she spotted a familiar figure sitting on a fallen log, sketching in a small book. She would have retreated quietly, but Nate looked up at the sound of her footsteps, his face brightening with recognition. "Miss Vance," he called. "What brings you out this way?" Olivia hesitated, then approached. "I was visiting a student. I didn't mean to interrupt your—" She gestured toward his sketchbook. "No interruption," he assured her, closing the book. "Just passing time. Doctor says I shouldn't be working yet, so Luke's got me doing nothing useful." "The doctor approved my stitching then?" she asked, unable to resist a small smile of pride. "Said it was neater than his own work," Nate confirmed, his eyes crinkling with that now familiar smile. "Seems you missed your calling as a medical professional." "I'm content with teaching," Olivia replied, though she felt a flush of pleasure at the compliment. "May I walk with you back to town?" He offered, standing carefully. "I promise to be a gentleman." Olivia hesitated, then nodded. There was something about Nate Lawson that made it difficult to maintain her usual reserve. Perhaps it was simply that he had no connection to her previous life, no knowledge of her family's rejection or Thomas's betrayal. They walked slowly along the creek bank, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows through the cottonwood trees. Nate pointed out wildlife tracks in the soft mud and asked thoughtful questions about her work at the school. "You're good with the children," he observed. "They talk about you at Sunday services. Little Emma Parker thinks you hung the moon." Olivia smiled, touched. "The children here are eager to learn. It makes teaching a joy." "Yet you don't seem entirely at home in Camp Verde," Nate said, his perception startling her. "You keep to yourself. Sarah says you never join the social gatherings. You've been asking about me." Olivia challenged, uncomfortable with the idea. Nate shrugged, unrepentant. "I was curious about the woman who saved my life." "I hardly saved your life. It was a minor wound. Still, most people would have left me to the doctor's care." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "You're different, Olivia Vance. I just haven't figured out why yet." The use of her first name sent an unexpected thrill through her. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to her with such familiarity. "Perhaps I value my privacy," she suggested, resuming their walk to avoid his searching gaze. "Fair enough," he conceded, matching her pace. "We all have things we'd rather not share." They reached the edge of town, and Olivia knew she should bid him goodbye. Yet she found herself reluctant to end their conversation. "The Harvest Festival is next weekend," Nate said suddenly. "Would you consider attending with me? As friends," he added quickly when she started to protest. "No romantic expectations, just two people enjoying the celebration." Olivia should have refused. It was the sensible choice, the safe choice, but something in Nate's open expression made her reconsider. "As friends," she agreed cautiously, "though I should warn you, I'm not much for dancing." His smile was like sunshine breaking through clouds. "I'll keep that in mind. I'll call for you at Sarah's house around noon on Saturday. That would be acceptable." As Olivia watched him walk away, she was struck by a troubling realization. For the first time since arriving in Camp Verde, she was looking forward to something beyond her daily routine. And that anticipation was dangerous indeed. The week before the Harvest Festival passed with excruciating slowness. Olivia found herself distracted during lessons, earning curious looks from Sarah and the children. She spent far too much time deciding which dress to wear, finally settling on her blue cotton with white trim, the least formal of her good dresses. By Saturday morning, she was a bundle of nerves. Sarah noticed her anxiety at breakfast. "It's just a festival, Olivia," she said gently. "Not a court appearance. I know, it's foolish to be nervous." "Not foolish at all. Nate Lawson is quite a catch," Sarah remarked with a twinkle in her eye. "Half the unmarried women in the county have set their caps for him over the years." This did nothing to calm Olivia's nerves. "We're attending as friends, nothing more." Sarah smiled knowingly but said nothing further. At precisely noon, a knock came at the door. Olivia's heart leaped into her throat as Sarah went to answer it. She heard Nate's deep voice greeting Sarah warmly, then Sarah inviting him in. Olivia stepped into the parlor, and for a moment she didn't recognize him. Gone was the dusty cowboy with blood-stained clothes. In his place stood a clean-shaven man in a crisp white shirt, dark vest, and polished boots. His usually untamed hair was neatly combed, though a stubborn lock still fell across his forehead. "Miss Vance," he said, his voice warm, "you look lovely." "Thank you, Mr. Lawson." "You're quite presentable yourself," he grinned at her formal tone. "High praise indeed. Shall we?" The festival was held in the town square, which had been transformed with bunting, tables laden with food, and a wooden platform for the musicians. Children raced about playing games while adults socialized and admired the harvest displays. Olivia felt self-conscious as they arrived, acutely aware of the curious glances and whispers their appearance together generated. Nate seemed oblivious, greeting townsfolk with easy familiarity and introducing her to those she hadn't yet met through the school. "Nate Lawson," a booming voice called out. A tall man with Nate's same blue eyes approached, clapping him on the shoulder. "Didn't think you'd actually show up." "Luke, this is Miss Olivia Vance," Nate said. "Olivia, my brother Luke Lawson." Luke's eyebrows rose as he took her hand. "The school teacher who patched him up. Pleased to meet you, madam. Been wondering who finally got my brother to attend a social event." "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Lawson," Olivia replied politely. "Luke's wife is around somewhere with our boys," Nate explained. "You'll meet them later." They wandered through the festival, sampling the food and watching the various competitions. Nate bought her a ribbon for her hair from one of the vendors, dismissing her protests with a casual, "Friends can give gifts, can't they?" The afternoon passed pleasantly, and Olivia found herself relaxing in Nate's company. He was an attentive companion, making sure she had refreshments and introducing her to people who might become friends. He told amusing stories about his travels and listened with genuine interest when she spoke of her students. As twilight approached, the musicians began to play and couples moved to the dance area. Nate turned to her with a questioning look. "I know you said you don't dance much, but would you honor me with one, just one?" Olivia hesitated. Dancing meant being held in his arms, an intimacy she hadn't allowed herself since Thomas. "Just one," she agreed finally. Nate led her to the edge of the dancing area, placing one hand respectfully at her waist while taking her hand with the other. The music was a simple waltz, and he guided her with surprising grace for a man who spent his days on horseback. "You dance well," she observed, trying to ignore the warmth that spread through her at his touch. "My mother insisted all her sons learn. Said no woman wants a man who stomps on her toes." His eyes crinkled with the smile that was becoming increasingly dear to her. "Though I haven't had much occasion to use the skill lately. No sweetheart waiting somewhere?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Something flickered in his eyes. "No, never found a woman who'd put up with my wandering ways." He studied her face. "What about you? Hard to believe someone as beautiful and accomplished as you doesn't have suitors lined up." Olivia looked away, the familiar pain surfacing. "I was engaged once." "It didn't end well." Nate's hand tightened slightly on hers. "His loss," he said simply. They danced in silence for a moment, the music swelling around them. "Camp Verde suits you," Nate said finally. "You've brought something special to this town." "I haven't done anything extraordinary." "You've shown kindness to people who needed it. That's extraordinary enough." His gaze was so intense that Olivia had to look away. "Will you stay after the school year?" The question caught her off guard. "I haven't decided." "What would make the decision easier?" There was something in his voice, a hint of vulnerability beneath the casual question that made Olivia meet his eyes again. "I came here to start over," she admitted. "My family, there was a falling out. I needed to prove I could make my own way. And have you proven it?" Olivia considered the question. "Perhaps, though I sometimes wonder if running away was the braver choice or the cowardly one." The music ended, but Nate didn't release her immediately. "Sometimes the bravest thing is knowing when to leave and when to stay," he said softly. "Seems to me you knew exactly what you needed." His understanding was unexpected and touching. Before Olivia could respond, they were interrupted by Luke calling Nate's name. "Duty calls," Nate said regretfully. "Will you be all right for a moment?" "Of course." Olivia assured him. I'll wait by the refreshment table. As Nate walked away to join his brother, Olivia took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. This was not what she had planned. She had come to Camp Verde to escape the pain of rejection, to build a life independent of emotional entanglements. Yet here she was, falling under the spell of a cowboy with kind eyes and a gentle touch. Miss Vance. A feminine voice interrupted her thoughts. I don't believe we've formally met. I'm Catherine Lawson, Luke's wife. Catherine was a pretty woman with auburn hair and a friendly smile. She held a sleeping toddler against her shoulder while an older boy of about 5 clung to her skirts. It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Lawson, Olivia replied. Call me Kathy, please. Everyone does. She nodded toward where Nate and Luke were deep in conversation. I see you've met my brother-in-law. Yes, I assisted him when he was injured recently. Kathy's eyes twinkled. So I heard. The whole town's talking about it and about how you came to the festival together today. Olivia felt her cheeks warm. We're just friends. Kathy hummed, clearly unconvinced. Well, as Nate's friend, you should know he's a good man, the best of men, really, loyal to a fault and kinder than he lets on. She shifted her sleeping child. He deserves someone who sees that. Before Olivia could respond to this pointed observation, Nate returned, his expression troubled. Everything all right? Olivia asked. Fine, he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Kathy, I see you've met Miss Vance. I was just singing your praises, Kathy replied with a mischievous smile. All good things, I promise. Don't believe a word, Nate told Olivia with forced lightness. Kathy thinks I hung the moon because I rescued her cat from a tree once. It was a mountain lion, and you know it, Kathy retorted, making Olivia laugh despite her concern over Nate's sudden change in mood. After Kathy excused herself to put her tired children to bed, Nate turned to Olivia with an apologetic expression. I'm afraid I need to cut our evening short. There's a situation at the ranch that requires my attention. Nothing serious, I hope, just business, he hesitated. Would you allow me to call on you again, perhaps Sunday after church? Despite her misgivings, Olivia found herself nodding. I'd like that. He escorted her back to Sarah's house, their conversation more subdued than earlier. At the door, he took her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. Thank you for today, Olivia. It meant more than you know. As she watched him walk away, Olivia was struck by the certainty that something significant had changed between them, and by the troubling realization that she didn't want to guard her heart as carefully as she should. Sunday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures, perfect for the outdoor church service held in the town square. Olivia sat with Sarah, trying not to be obvious as she searched the gathering for Nate. He arrived just as the service was beginning, slipping into a seat at the back with Luke and his family. Throughout the minister's sermon, Olivia found her attention wandering to the tall figure at the rear of the congregation. Once she caught him watching her, and he offered a small smile that set her heart racing. After the service, as people mingled and socialized, Nate made his way to her side. Good morning, he greeted her, his voice warm. You look lovely today. Thank you, Olivia replied, feeling suddenly shy under Sarah's interested gaze. How are things at the ranch? A shadow crossed his face. Complicated, but nothing for you to worry about. He glanced at Sarah. Would you mind if I stole Miss Vance for a walk, with your approval, of course? Sarah smiled. By all means, I'll see you at dinner, Olivia. Nate offered his arm, and Olivia took it, aware of the curious glances from the townspeople as they strolled away from the square. He led her toward the creek path where they had walked before. You're causing quite a stir in town, Nate observed once they were away from prying eyes. The mysterious Miss Vance walking out with the prodigal Lawson son. You're hardly prodigal, Olivia protested, and I'm certainly not mysterious. Aren't you? He glanced at her with a raised eyebrow. A well-educated, refined woman appears suddenly in a frontier town, keeping to herself and revealing nothing about her past. Sounds mysterious to me, Olivia sighed. There's no great secret, just disappointment. They reached the creek and stopped, watching the water flow over smooth stones. A comfortable silence settled between them until Nate spoke again. I'm leaving tomorrow, he said quietly, heading to Tucson on ranch business. Olivia felt a sharp pang of disappointment. I see. When will you return? A week, maybe 2. He turned to face her, his expression serious. Olivia, there's something I need to ask you. Her heart beat faster. Yes, would you write to me while I'm gone? I'd like to continue getting to know you, even at a distance. The request was unexpected but not unwelcome. I could do that, she agreed, relief washed over his features. Thank you. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small package wrapped in brown paper. I got you something, a token to remember me by. Olivia unwrapped it carefully to find a small leather-bound book of poetry. She opened it to discover it was Tennyson, one of her favorites. How did you know? She asked, genuinely touched. You mentioned liking poetry when we were at the festival. The bookseller in Phoenix had this when I was there last month. He shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. It's not much, but it's perfect, she interrupted, clutching the book to her chest. Thank you, Nate, he smiled, the tension leaving his shoulders. You're welcome. They walked back toward town, discussing which poems were their favorites and discovering a shared love of literature. At Sarah's door, Nate hesitated. I'll send word when I return, he promised, and I'll look forward to your letters. Safe travels, Olivia replied, surprised by how much she would miss his company. He tipped his hat and departed, leaving Olivia to explain to an extremely curious Sarah why she was clutching a book of poetry with such a dreamy expression. True to his word, Nate wrote to Olivia from Tucson. His letters were thoughtful and often amusing, describing the characters he encountered and sharing stories from his past. Olivia found herself eagerly anticipating each one and spending evenings crafting her replies. In her letters, Olivia gradually revealed more about herself, her childhood in Phoenix, her education back east, her love of teaching. She didn't mention her family's rejection or Thomas's betrayal, but she wrote about her hopes for the future and her growing fondness for Camp Verde. 2 weeks stretched into 3, then 4. October brought cooler temperatures and preparations for winter. Olivia threw herself into teaching, but her thoughts often strayed to Nate. His letters had become less frequent, and she wondered if his interest was waning. Then, on a brisk November morning, Olivia looked up from helping a student with arithmetic to see a familiar figure in the schoolhouse doorway. Nate stood watching her, hat in hand, his face thinner than she remembered but his eyes as warm as ever. Class, continue with your sums, she instructed, her voice remarkably steady despite her racing heart. She approached Nate, conscious of the children's curious gazes. Mr. Lawson, you've returned. Miss Vance, he replied formally, though his eyes conveyed a more intimate greeting. Might I have a word after your lessons conclude? Of course. We finish at 3. He nodded and departed, leaving Olivia to face the remainder of the day with barely contained anticipation. At 3 o'clock precisely, as the children filed out, Nate reappeared. He waited patiently while Olivia gathered her things, then offered his arm for the walk to Sarah's house. You were gone longer than expected, Olivia observed once they were alone. Business complications, he explained vaguely. I would have written more, but circumstances made it difficult. Something in his tone suggested there was more to the story, but Olivia didn't press. I'm glad you're back safely. They reached the small bridge over the creek and Nate stopped, turning to face her. Olivia, I need to tell you something. His serious expression sent a chill through her. What is it? While I was in Tucson, I made some inquiries about the Vance family. Olivia stiffened, a sense of betrayal washing over her. You investigated me. Not exactly, he said quickly. I have business contacts who mentioned your father's mining operations. It led to conversations. And what did these conversations reveal? Her voice was cold. Nate sighed. That Maxwell Vance disowned his daughter for becoming engaged to Thomas Blackburn, son of his business rival. That the engagement ended when Blackburn chose his inheritance over the relationship. Hearing her painful history recited so matter-of-factly made Olivia feel exposed and vulnerable. You had no right, she whispered. Perhaps not, he acknowledged. But Olivia, I needed to understand. Why? What possible difference could it make to you? Because I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. And I needed to know what I was up against. His declaration should have thrilled her. Instead, it filled her with panic. You don't know me, Nate. I know enough, he insisted, taking her hand. I know you're brave and kind. I know you find joy in teaching children who others might consider beneath your station. I know you stitch wounds without flinching and dance like you're afraid to feel too much pleasure. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. Stop, please. I know you've been hurt, he continued gently. By your family and by a man who didn't deserve you. But Olivia, I'm not Thomas Blackburn. I would never choose anything over you. You say that now, she replied bitterly, but you don't understand what it means to defy a family like mine. The social consequences, the financial ruin, actually, I do understand, Nate interrupted, his expression hardening. More than you know, my brother and I have been fighting your father's mining company for years. Olivia stared at him in shock. What? The ranch business that took me to Tucson? It was a legal battle. Your father's company has been trying to claim water rights that would destroy the Circle L. His laugh was humorless. Imagine my surprise when I realized I was falling for Maxwell Vance's daughter. You never said anything, Olivia whispered, her mind reeling. How could I? I was still trying to process it myself. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. When I realized who you were, I should have stayed away, but I couldn't. Even knowing it might complicate everything, I couldn't stop thinking about you. Olivia felt dizzy with confusion and hurt. All this time, Nate had known who she was, had been fighting her father's company, yet had pursued her anyway. I need time, she said finally. This is too much. Nate nodded, his expression pained but understanding. Take all the time you need, but Olivia, please know this. I don't care who your father is or what stands between our families. I care about you, the woman who stitched my wound and discussed poetry by the creek. The woman who's brave enough to build a new life on her own terms. He released her hand and stepped back. I'll be at the ranch when you're ready to talk. Olivia watched him walk away, her emotions in turmoil. She had come to Camp Verde to escape her family's influence, only to find herself entangled in their conflicts once again. Yet this time, the stakes felt immeasurably higher. For days, Olivia avoided thinking about Nate's revelation. She threw herself into her teaching, staying late at the schoolhouse to prepare lessons and volunteering for additional duties. Sarah watched her with concern but didn't pry. Yet at night, when she was alone with her thoughts, Olivia couldn't escape the memory of Nate's words. I'm falling in love with you. Despite everything her family, his business conflict with her father, he wanted her. Not for her family connections or her social standing, but for herself. It was exactly what she had once hoped for with Thomas, but Thomas had proven weak when faced with opposition. Would Nate be different? Could she trust him with her heart when there was so much standing between them? A week after their confrontation, Olivia received a letter. The handwriting was unfamiliar and the return address was Phoenix. With trembling fingers, she broke the seal. It was from her mother. My dearest Olivia, the letter began. I pray this finds you well, though your father would be furious if he knew I was writing. I have discovered your whereabouts from a friend whose business took him to Camp Verde. He mentioned meeting a young teacher named Vance who could only be my daughter. Olivia's heart raced as she continued reading. I wish you to know that not all of us have hardened our hearts against you. Your sister asks after you constantly, and even your father, in unguarded moments, speaks of you with regret. Pride prevents him from reaching out, but perhaps time will soften his stance. The letter continued with family news and expressions of maternal concern. The final paragraph, however, made Olivia's blood run cold. I must warn you of something troubling. Your father has learned that the Lawson brothers of the Circle L ranch near Camp Verde are organizing opposition to his water rights claims. He speaks of crushing them and has employed legal means that I fear may not be entirely ethical. If you have any connection to these people, please be cautious. Your father's anger can be ruthless, as you well know. Olivia set the letter down, her hands shaking. Her father was targeting Nate's family directly, and from her mother's veiled warning, he might resort to underhanded tactics. She had to warn Nate, regardless of her confused feelings toward him. Grabbing her shawl, Olivia hurried out, barely pausing to tell Sarah she needed to run an errand. The walk to the Circle L ranch was 3 miles, but Olivia barely noticed the distance as she rehearsed what to say. The ranch came into view as the sun was beginning to set a sprawling operation with a handsome main house, several outbuildings, and extensive corrals. A ranch hand directed her to the stables when she asked for Nate. She found him there, repairing tack with focused concentration. He looked up at her approach, surprise and then hope flickering across his face. "Olivia," he said, setting aside his work, "what brings you out here?" Without preamble, she thrust her mother's letter toward him. "You need to see this. My father knows about your opposition to his water claims. He's planning something." Nate read the letter quickly, his expression darkening. "This confirms what our lawyer suspected. Your father's company has been filing legal challenges to our water access, but there have been rumors of more direct threats against ranchers who have sided with us. What can you do? Keep fighting, legally and otherwise." His jaw set with determination. "We won't be intimidated." Olivia wrung her hands. "This is my fault. If I hadn't come to Camp Verde, don't," Nate interrupted firmly. "Your father's actions are his own responsibility, not yours." He studied her face. "Why did you come to warn me? You could have sent this with a messenger." "I was worried," she admitted. "And I needed to see you." Something softened in his expression. "I've missed you, Olivia. I've missed you too." The confession felt like stepping off a cliff, exhilarating and terrifying at once. "I've been thinking about what you said. And I'm afraid," she admitted. "Not of you, but of what might happen. My father can be vindictive. If he discovers there's something between us, he might direct even more of his anger toward your family." "Let him try," Nate said with quiet confidence. "The Lawsons have weathered worse than Maxwell Vance. You don't understand. He ruined Thomas's family business when he discovered our engagement. He could do the same to you." Nate took a step closer. "There's a difference between Thomas Blackburn and me, Olivia. I'm not afraid of your father, and I won't let fear dictate who I love." The word love hung in the air between them. Olivia's heart hammered in her chest. "I can't ask you to risk everything for me," she whispered. "You're not asking, I'm offering." He reached for her hand. "Whatever comes, we'll face it together if you want to." The moment stretched between them, full of possibility and danger. Olivia thought of all she had lost: her family, her security, her trust in love. But she also thought of what she might gain. A man who saw her for who she truly was, who valued her strength and independence, who would stand beside her against any opposition. "I want to," she said finally, "but slowly. I need time to be sure." Nate's smile was like sunrise after a long night. "We have all the time in the world." He raised her hand to his lips. "May I court you properly, Miss Vance, with Sarah's approval, of course?" "Yes," Olivia replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "I'd like that very much." As the winter of 1878 settled over Camp Verde, Nate courted Olivia with patient devotion. He escorted her to church on Sundays, brought her small gifts of books and wildflower bouquets, and invited her to the Circle L for Sunday dinners with Luke and Kathy. Through these visits, Olivia came to understand the depth of Nate's connection to the land. The Circle L wasn't just a business. It was a legacy his father had built from nothing, a home that represented generations of hard work and sacrifice. Her respect for Nate deepened as she watched him work alongside the ranch hands, solving problems and planning for the ranch's future despite the looming threat from her father's company. Meanwhile, Olivia continued teaching, finding increasing fulfillment in her students' progress. She gradually became more involved in the community, helping organize the Christmas pageant and attending social gatherings she would have previously avoided. The reserved, cautious woman who had arrived in Camp Verde began to fade, replaced by someone more confident and open. Sarah observed these changes with approval. "That young man has been good for you," she remarked one evening as they prepared dinner. "You smile more." "He makes it easy to smile," Olivia admitted. "He accepts me as I am." "That's what love should be," Sarah said wisely. "Not trying to change someone, but appreciating who they already are." Love. The word still frightened Olivia, though less than before. What she felt for Nate was deeper and more substantial than her feelings for Thomas had ever been. With Thomas, she had been in love with the idea of rebellion, of defying her father's control. With Nate, she was discovering partnership, mutual respect, and genuine affection that grew stronger each day. Yet the shadow of her father's opposition to the Circle L loomed over their budding relationship. In January, Nate and Luke traveled to Phoenix for a court hearing regarding the water rights. They returned with grim faces. "The judge ruled in your father's favor on the preliminary injunction," Nate explained to Olivia as they walked along the frozen creek. "It means we can't access the eastern water source until the main case is decided. What will you do?" Olivia asked, troubled by the worry lines etched on his face. "Adapt. We're digging new wells and Luke's talking to neighboring ranchers about sharing resources." He squeezed her hand. "Don't worry, we Lawsons are stubborn. Like the Vances," she observed with a small smile. "Exactly." His eyes crinkled. "Perhaps that's why I'm so drawn to you. I recognize that determination." February brought heavy snows that isolated Camp Verde for weeks. Olivia found herself stranded at the Circle L after a Sunday visit when a blizzard made the roads impassable. Kathy lent her clothes and set her up in the guest room, treating the situation with practical frontier hospitality. Those unexpected days at the ranch deepened Olivia's bond with the Lawson family. She helped Kathy with household tasks and the children, discussed books with Luke in the evenings, and spent precious hours with Nate, learning about ranching and sharing stories of their childhoods. On her third night there, as they sat before the fire after the others had retired, Nate asked the question she had been dreading. "Do you ever think about reconciling with your family?" Olivia stared into the flames. "Sometimes. My mother's letter suggested my father might be softening. But after everything that's happened between your family and his business." "It complicates things," Nate acknowledged. "More than complicates, it might make reconciliation impossible." She turned to face him. "Would you hate me if I wanted to try, if someday I wanted to make peace with them?" "Hate you?" He looked genuinely shocked. "Olivia, I would never resent you for wanting your family in your life. The dispute between the Circle L and your father's company is business. What's between us is separate." "Is it? Can it be?" "I believe so." He took her hand. "I won't pretend it would be easy. Your father might never accept me, but I would never ask you to choose between us. That's what your father did with Thomas, and it was wrong." His understanding moved her deeply. "You're a better person than I deserve, Nathaniel Lawson." "No." He shook his head firmly. "I'm exactly what you deserve, which is someone who loves you completely, stubbornness and all." He hesitated, then added softly, "Because I do love you, Olivia. I think I have since you stitched up my side with those perfect little stitches, scolding me the whole time." The declaration, though not unexpected after months of courtship, still took her breath away. Olivia had protected her heart for so long, afraid of the pain that came with vulnerability. But here, in the warm firelight with snow falling outside, that fear seemed distant and insignificant compared to the joy of loving and being loved. "I love you too," she whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and right. "I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself." Nate's smile was radiant as he drew her closer. "No more fear," he murmured, and then he was kissing her, his lips warm and certain against hers. It was their first kiss, and it felt like coming home after a long journey. Olivia let herself melt into his embrace, all her doubts momentarily forgotten in the simple joy of connection. When they finally parted, Nate rested his forehead against hers. "When the weather clears and the roads are passable again, I'd like to speak to Sarah about my intentions." "Intentions?" Olivia's heart raced to ask for your hand. He searched her eyes. "Is that too soon? I know we've only known each other since summer, but it's not too soon," she interrupted. "Not when you're sure." "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The blizzard lasted 2 more days. When Nate finally drove Olivia back to town in the ranch sleigh, she felt as though she were returning a different woman than the one who had left more certain of her place in the world and her own heart. True to his word, Nate spoke with Sarah that very evening, formally requesting permission to court Olivia with the intention of marriage. Sarah, who had watched their relationship blossom with maternal approval, gave her blessing without hesitation. As winter melted into spring, Olivia and Nate's courtship became the talk of Camp Verde. They made no secret of their feelings, attending social functions together and spending as much time in each other's company as propriety and their responsibilities allowed. Nate began building an addition to his cabin on Circle L property, a sunny room that would serve as Olivia's private study. Yet even as their future together took shape, the conflict between the Circle L and Vance Mining Company intensified. Maxwell Vance filed new legal challenges and began buying land surrounding the ranch, slowly restricting its access to crucial resources. In April, Olivia received another letter from her mother, this one more urgent than the last. "Your father has learned of your relationship with Nathaniel Lawson," she wrote. "His fury is beyond anything I have witnessed. He speaks of coming to Camp Verde himself to put an end to this nonsense. Please, my daughter, be cautious. I fear what he might do in his anger." Olivia shared the letter with Nate immediately. His response was calm but resolute. "Let him come," he said. "Perhaps it's time we face this head-on instead of through lawyers and court filings. He'll try to intimidate you," Olivia warned. "He's very good at making people bend to his will." Nate smiled grimly. "So I've heard. But I won't be intimidated, Olivia, not when it comes to you or the ranch. Your father needs to understand that." The confrontation came sooner than expected. Just 2 days later, Olivia was reviewing arithmetic with her students when the schoolhouse door burst open. A tall, imposing man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway, his face a mask of controlled anger. Maxwell Vance had arrived in Camp Verde. "Father," Olivia gasped, rising from her desk. The children turned in their seats, wide-eyed at the interruption and the sudden tension in their teacher's voice. "Class dismissed," Olivia managed to say, her voice remarkably steady despite her shock. "Please gather your things and go directly home." The children scrambled to obey, filing past Maxwell with curious glances. When the last child had departed, Olivia faced her father across the empty schoolroom. "You look well," he said stiffly, removing his hat. "Teaching suits you." "Thank you." Olivia clasped her hands to stop their trembling. "What are you doing here? Is that any way to greet your father after nearly a year?" His tone was cold. "I've come to bring you home, of course." "Home?" Olivia repeated incredulously. "You disowned me, said I was no longer welcome in your house." Maxwell waved a dismissive hand. "Words spoken in anger. Your mother has been distraught, your sister miserable. It's time you resumed your proper place." "My proper place?" Anger replaced Olivia's initial shock. "You mean under your control, obeying your every dictate without question." "I mean as a Vance," he corrected sharply. "Not hiding in some frontier town, associating with people beneath your station." His lip curled. "Especially not Lawson." "So that's what this is really about," Olivia realized. "Not concern for me, but anger that I've aligned myself with your business opponents." "The Lawsons are trying to block progress," Maxwell snapped. "Their primitive ranching operation stands in the way of developments that could bring prosperity to the entire territory." "Their primitive operation feeds half the territory and provides honest work for dozens of families," Olivia retorted. "And Nate Lawson is a better man than you could ever understand." Her father's face darkened. "So it's Nate now, is it? Have you learned nothing from your disaster with Blackburn? These infatuations lead nowhere but disappointment." "This is different," Olivia insisted. "Nate isn't Thomas. He won't be intimidated or bought off." "Everyone has their price," Maxwell said dismissively, Lawson included. The schoolhouse door opened again and Nate himself entered, his expression hard as he took in the scene. "Mr. Vance," he said coolly, "I thought I might find you here." Maxwell turned, his posture stiffening. "Lawson." "I was just explaining to my daughter that her little adventure in independence has reached its conclusion. She'll be returning to Phoenix with me." "That's for Olivia to decide," Nate replied, moving to stand beside her. "Not you or me." "Stay out of this," Maxwell warned. "This is a family matter." "Anything that concerns Olivia concerns me." Nate's voice was quiet but firm. "Especially when someone tries to bully her, even if that someone is her father." Olivia felt a surge of gratitude for Nate's solid presence beside her, his unwavering support giving her strength. "Father," she said, her voice steadier now, I'm not returning to Phoenix. My life is here now, my work, my friends, my future. She reached for Nate's hand. The man I love. Maxwell's face reddened with anger. Love, you think this frontier ruffian loves you? He's using you, Olivia. Using your connection to the Vance name to gain advantage in our legal disputes. That's enough, Nate interrupted, his eyes flashing. I loved Olivia before I knew she was your daughter, and I continued to love her after, despite the complications it created. My feelings for her have nothing to do with your company or your water rights. Prove it, Maxwell challenged. Drop your opposition to our water claims. If your love is genuine, you'll put her interests above your ranches. My interests, Olivia interjected before Nate could respond. You don't know what my interests are, Father. You never bothered to ask. You've spent my entire life telling me what to think, who to associate with, what my future should be, but you never once asked what I wanted. Her words seemed to penetrate Maxwell's anger, if only momentarily. He studied her face, perhaps truly seeing her for the first time. And what do you want, Olivia? He asked finally. This life I've built, she answered without hesitation, teaching children who appreciate the opportunity to learn. Living in a community where people value me for my contributions, not my family name, and a future with Nate, who loves me exactly as I am, not as someone to be molded to his specifications. Maxwell's expression hardened again. You're making a mistake, one you'll regret when the novelty of this primitive existence wears off. The only mistake I've made was allowing you to dictate my happiness for so long, Olivia replied sadly. Please, Father, can't you see that I'm happy here, that I've found purpose and love? For a moment, something like regret flickered in Maxwell's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold determination. You've made your choice, he said flatly. But know this, I will not abandon the water rights claims. The Lawson Ranch will either sell to us at our price or be strangled into submission. He fixed Nate with a hard stare. And when that happens, when you're ruined, we'll see how much your love is worth. With that, he jammed his hat back on his head and strode from the schoolhouse, the door slamming behind him. Olivia sagged against Nate, the confrontation leaving her drained and shaking. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her close as tears she'd fought to contain spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered against his shirt. He's so stubborn, so convinced he's always right. Reminds me of someone else I know, Nate murmured, pressing a kiss to her hair. Though in your case it's an admirable quality. Despite everything, Olivia found herself laughing through her tears. What are we going to do? He won't stop, Nate. This is personal for him now. Nate's expression grew serious. We fight, legally, ethically, but with everything we have. The Circle L isn't just land to my family, Olivia. It's our heritage, our future. He cupped her face in his hands. Our children's future, if you'll have me. The unexpected reference to children, their children, momentarily drove all thoughts of her father from Olivia's mind. Is that a proposal, Nathaniel Lawson? She asked softly. Not exactly, he smiled. When I propose, it'll be with a ring and perhaps fewer threats of financial ruin hanging over us, his expression sobered. But yes, Olivia. I want to marry you, to build a life with you, to face whatever comes together, including your father. Olivia stretched up to kiss him, pouring all her love and determination into the gesture. Then we'll fight, she agreed when they parted. Together. Maxwell Vance departed Camp Verde the following day, but his presence lingered in the form of intensified legal pressure on the Circle L. Throughout May, as wildflowers bloomed across the Arizona landscape, the Lawson brothers found themselves in an increasingly desperate battle to save their ranch. Water access was systematically restricted as Vance Mining Company purchased surrounding lands. Supply costs mysteriously increased when merchants learned the goods were destined for the Circle L. The bank in Phoenix that held the ranch's mortgage suddenly demanded additional collateral. Through it all, Olivia watched Nate and Luke fight with unwavering determination. They found alternative water sources, negotiated with friendly neighboring ranchers, and traveled to Prescott to secure financing from a bank beyond Maxwell Vance's influence. Olivia contributed in ways she could, keeping the ranch books, writing letters to potential allies, and using her education to help navigate legal documents. She also continued teaching, finding solace in her students' simple joy in learning even as her personal life grew more complicated. The town of Camp Verde rallied around the Lawsons, recognizing that if the Circle L fell to Vance Mining, their own independence might be threatened next. Merchants extended credit, neighbors offered help with cattle drives, and the town council passed resolutions supporting the ranch's water rights claims. Olivia received no more letters from her mother, though she wrote several times, assuring her that she was well and happy despite Maxwell's machinations. She wondered if her father was intercepting the correspondence or if her mother had chosen silence out of self-preservation. June brought both relief and new tension. The territorial court issued a ruling partially favoring the Circle Elticus water claims, providing a reprieve from the immediate crisis. But Maxwell Vance responded by filing new legal challenges, and rumors spread that he was planning something more direct. "He won't give up," Olivia told Nate as they sat on the porch of his now completed cabin one evening. "It's not in his nature." "Neither will we," Nate replied, his arm around her shoulders. The spring roundup was successful despite everything, and Luke's negotiating a new cattle contract that could secure our finances through winter. Olivia leaned against him, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "I wish there was a way to end this conflict. It's exhausting thinking of the people I love at odds forever." Nate was quiet for a moment. "Would you consider writing to your father directly, not apologizing or conceding, but proposing a meeting? Perhaps if he saw how determined we are, how committed to each other, and to making this work." "You think he might be persuaded to compromise?" Olivia sounded doubtful. "I think he loves you in his own way," Nate said carefully. "And ultimately, he must want your happiness. Maybe seeing that your future is irrevocably tied to the Circle L will make him reconsider his approach." Olivia considered the suggestion. "It's worth trying," she agreed finally, "though I don't hold much hope." She wrote the letter that night, pouring her heart onto the pages. She explained her love for Nate, her fulfillment in teaching, and her growing connection to Camp Verde. She proposed a meeting in Prescott Neutral Territory where they might discuss a resolution that would allow both the Circle L and Vance Mining to prosper without destroying each other. To her surprise, a reply came within 2 weeks. Maxwell agreed to the meeting, though his terse response gave no indication of his willingness to compromise. He would be in Prescott on July 15th and would meet them at the Grand Hotel at noon. "It's something," Nate said encouragingly when Olivia showed him the letter. "At least he's willing to talk." The journey to Prescott took a full day by wagon. Olivia spent most of it alternating between hope and anxiety, rehearsing what she would say to her father. Nate, ever her rock, kept the conversation light during the trip, distracting her with plans for expanding his cabin and stories about the antics of Luke's boys. They arrived in Prescott the evening before the scheduled meeting and took rooms at a modest hotel, not the grand establishment where they would meet Maxwell. That night, despite her nervousness, Olivia slept soundly, comforted by the knowledge that whatever happened the next day, she and Nate would face it together. Maxwell Vance was already seated in the hotel restaurant when they arrived at precisely noon the following day. He rose as they approached, his expression guarded but not openly hostile. "Olivia," he nodded stiffly. "Mr. Lawson." "Father," Olivia summoned a smile. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." They sat, an awkward silence falling over the table until a waiter came to take their orders. Once that distraction passed, Maxwell fixed his attention on Nate. "I assume you have a proposal," he said without preamble. "Something that will convince me to abandon my rightful claims to water resources essential for mining operations." Nate met his gaze steadily. "I have a proposition for partnership, not abandonment. The territory has enough resources for both ranching and mining to thrive if we're willing to cooperate rather than compete." "Partnership," Maxwell looked skeptical, "with a family operation that barely turns a profit." "The Circle L has been profitable for 20 years, Nate corrected calmly. Not with the margins of a mining operation, perhaps, but sustainable and growing. We employ 30 people full-time and another 20 seasonally. We feed communities throughout the territory. Olivia watched her father's face, looking for signs that Nate's words were having any impact. His expression remained impassive, but he was listening, which was something. What we're proposing, Nate continued, is a coordinated approach to water usage. Your operations need water for processing ore. Our cattle need water for drinking and our lands for grazing. With proper scheduling and infrastructure, we could share the resources without either operation suffering. And why would I agree to such an arrangement when I could simply wait for your ranch to fail? Maxwell challenged. Because it would cost you more in legal fees and delayed mining operations than cooperation would, Nate replied promptly. And because your daughter's happiness depends on the success of the Circle L. Maxwell's gaze shifted to Olivia. You're that determined to tie yourself to this ranch, to this man? I am, Olivia said firmly. I love him, father, and I love the life we're building together. She reached for Nate's hand on the table. Nothing you do to undermine the ranch will change that. It will only ensure that your grandchildren grow up never knowing you. The mention of grandchildren made Maxwell blink, perhaps truly considering the long-term consequences of his actions for the first time. You're planning to marry then, he said flatly. Yes, Nate answered, squeezing Olivia's hand. With or without your blessing, though we'd prefer the former. Maxwell was silent for a long moment, studying them both. Finally, he sighed. Your mother misses you terribly, he told Olivia. She'll never forgive me if I don't at least try to mend this rift. Hope fluttered in Olivia's chest. Does that mean you're willing to consider our proposal? I'll review it, Maxwell conceded grudgingly. Have your lawyers draw up the details for water usage scheduling and infrastructure costs. My team will evaluate whether it's feasible. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. The rest of the meal passed with careful conversation. Maxwell inquiring about Olivia's teaching and her life in Camp Verde with what seemed like genuine interest. By the time they parted, a tentative truce had been established. He's a proud man, Nate observed as they watched Maxwell's carriage pull away. It won't be easy for him to compromise. No, Olivia agreed, but he took the first step today. That's more than I dared hope for. Throughout the remainder of summer and into early autumn, negotiations between the Circle L and Vance Mining continued. There were setbacks and frustrations, moments when the truce seemed on the verge of collapse. But gradually, a framework for cooperation took shape. In September, as golden light bathed the Arizona landscape, and the first hints of cooler weather touched the mornings, Nate took Olivia on a picnic to her favorite spot by the creek. After they ate, he dropped to one knee, presenting her with a delicate gold ring set with a small but perfect diamond. Olivia Vance, he said, his voice husky with emotion, you came to Camp Verde running from one life and found another. You saved me not just from a snake bite, but from a life half-lived. Will you marry me? Be my wife, my partner, my heart's home for all our days. Tears of joy spilled down Olivia's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. They set the wedding date for November, when the heat of summer had fully yielded to autumn's gentle touch. Olivia sent invitations to her family with trepidation, unsure if they would attend despite the improving relations with her father. To her surprise and joy, replies came not just from her mother and sister, but from Maxwell himself, all accepting. Her mother's letter overflowed with excitement about the upcoming visit, while her father's response was characteristically brief, but included a mention of a wedding gift that would contribute to your future prosperity. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and crisp, the desert air sharp with the scent of sage and possibilities. Olivia dressed in Sarah's home, her mother and sister helping with her gown, a simple but elegant creation of ivory satin with lace trim. You look beautiful, her mother said, tears in her eyes as she adjusted Olivia's veil. So grown up and confident, Camp Verde has been good for you. Nate has been good for me, Olivia corrected gently. He loves me as I am, not as someone I should become. Her mother's expression turned thoughtful. Perhaps that's what all of us need, she mused, to be loved for who we are, not who others wish us to be. The church was filled with townsfolk who had become friends over the past year. Luke stood beside Nate as his best man, while Olivia's sister served as her maid of honor. But the greatest surprise came when Maxwell Vance himself offered his arm to escort his daughter down the aisle. "I've been stubborn and blind," he murmured as they prepared to enter the church. "Can you forgive an old man his pride?" Olivia squeezed his arm. "There's nothing to forgive if we can move forward together." The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. Nate's eyes never left Olivia's face as they exchanged vows, his voice strong and sure as he promised to love and cherish her all the days of his life. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss they shared was a seal on all they had overcome and a promise of all that lay ahead. At the reception held at the Circle L, Maxwell Vance surprised everyone by announcing his wedding gift: a legal document permanently securing the ranch's water rights, along with a proposal for a joint venture that would benefit both the ranch and his mining operations. "To new beginnings," he toasted, raising his glass to the newlyweds, "and to the wisdom to recognize what truly matters in this life." As the celebration continued around them, Nate drew Olivia aside to a quiet corner of the ranch house. "Happy, Mrs. Lawson?" he asked, his eyes crinkling with the smile that had first captured her heart. "Completely," she assured him, stretching up to kiss him, "though I still can hardly believe my father's change of heart." "I think he finally understood what I knew from the beginning," Nate said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "That you're extraordinary exactly as you are strong, compassionate, determined, and that loving you means embracing all of that, not trying to change it." Olivia rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I came to Camp Verde thinking my life was over," she mused, "that I'd lost everything that mattered. I never imagined I'd find something so much more valuable." "What's that?" Nate asked, his arms tightening around her. "A love that accepts me completely, a partner who stands beside me through any challenge, a future built on mutual respect and understanding." She smiled up at him. "A home that has nothing to do with buildings or land and everything to do with you." In the years that followed, Olivia and Nate built a life that exceeded their every hope. The Circle L flourished under their joint management, with Olivia's business acumen complementing Nate's practical ranching knowledge. They welcomed their first child, a son named James, the following year, and a daughter, Elizabeth, 2 years later. Olivia continued teaching part-time, eventually helping to establish Camp Verde's first proper school building. Her relationship with her family healed completely, with regular visits between Phoenix and the ranch. Even Maxwell became a doting grandfather, teaching young James about business while Nate taught him about cattle and horses. The conflict between ranching and mining interests in the territory gradually gave way to cooperation, as other operations followed the model established by the Lawson-Vance partnership. What had begun as bitter opposition evolved into mutual prosperity that benefited the entire region. On their 5th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch of their expanded home watching their children play in the yard, Olivia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. "Any regrets?" Nate asked, reading her thoughtful expression. "Not a single one," she replied, leaning into his embrace. "Every step, even the painful ones, led me here to you, to our family, to a life fuller than I ever imagined possible. To think it all started with a rattlesnake," Nate mused, chuckling. "Remind me to thank that snake someday." Olivia laughed, the sound carrying across the ranch that had become not just their livelihood, but the physical embodiment of their love, a love strong enough to overcome family opposition, business conflicts, and the doubts of a woman who had once believed her heart too damaged to trust again. In the end, her family had cast her out for loving the wrong man. But in that exile, she had found the right one, a cowboy who loved her exactly as she was, with all her strength, all her stubbornness, all her determination to forge her own path. And in that love, Olivia Vance Lawson had found not just acceptance, but the freedom to become her truest self.